Alright, let's let this go live for a bit. Okay, due to Ed having to restart his computer, and it's going to take a bit, I decided just to let y'all listen to Ronald Reagan. It's 9 minutes 8 seconds. It was edited down from the full 20-some minutes that it was, and more pertinent information is in there. It's from his inaugural speech. I've used it before. I'll use it again, give Ed time to get his thing going. All right.
Stop to think how unique we really are. In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle.
All participants are muted.
Mr. President, I want our fellow citizens to know how much you did to carry on this tradition. By your gracious cooperation in the transition process, you have shown a watching world that we are a united people, pledged to maintaining a political system which guarantees individual liberty to a greater degree than any other. And I thank you and your people for all your help in maintaining the continuity which is the bulwark of our republic. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. Well, if no one among us is capable of governing himself, then who among us has the capacity to govern someone else? So as we begin, let us take inventory. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is time to check and reverse the growth of government, which shows signs of having grown beyond the consent of the governed. It is my intention to curb the size and influence of the federal establishment and to demand recognition of the distinction between the powers granted to the federal government and those reserved to the states or to the people. All of us need to be reminded that the federal government did not create the states. The states created the federal government. Now, so there will be no misunderstanding, it's not my intention to do away with government. It is rather to make it work with us, not over us, to stand by our side, not ride on our back. Government can and must provide opportunity, not smother it, foster productivity, not stifle it. If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. It is no coincidence that our present troubles parallel and are proportionate to the intervention and intrusion in our lives that result from unnecessary and excessive growth of government. It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We're not, as some would have us believe, doomed to an inevitable decline. I do not believe in a fate that will fall on us no matter what we do. I do believe in a fate that will fall on us if we do nothing. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. We have every right to dream heroic dreams. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. On the eve of our struggle for independence, a man who might have been one of the greatest among the founding fathers, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Congress, said to his fellow Americans, "Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. Our forbearance should never be misunderstood. Our reluctance for conflict should not be misjudged as a failure of will. When action is required to preserve our national security, we will act. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. Beyond those monuments to heroism is the Potomac River, and on the far shore, the sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David. They add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, "My Pledge," he had written these words: "America must win this war. Therefore, I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone." The crisis we're facing today does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans.
Again, that it was Ronald Reagan. at his first inaugural speech. It was edited down a bit, but now the teacher finally managed to get unstuck from the lounge, teacher's lounge, and he's in. So Ed, take it away.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for joining us again tonight. I'm going to be discussing tonight dealing with Title IV, so people have a concept of what's really going on. Randall Stone did a show the other night on his participation, and he had an attorney on it, and it was interesting because the attorney was supporting and endorsing that you have to go through their system to have your children back, or you had to participate to have a child, and it's like, no, it don't work that way. Claiming and owning your bloodline does work. That is your responsibility to own your children. And if you don't want to be responsible, you cannot whine and complain to others because you're not responsible. It is that simple. It's knowing what your responsibility to your child and yourself is. If you don't know your child, if you don't know yourself, then it's time you need to sit down and know who, what, why, what you are doing for you. Because the thing that really is frustrating for you guys involved who have children is I don't have children. My children are deceased. They're dead. So I don't have a regulation or a concern trying to deal with those type of things. I just don't. And it's sad, but true, but I just deal with it the way life gave it to me. That's the one thing. I'm not going to sit there and go pray to God and play all the travesty of mind control sarcasm. Because it is sarcasm. Either you deal with life or you have life. If you don't want life, then you don't deal with life. That is the sad part about what really goes on in today's circumstances of the real world. The real world. Everybody says, oh, we're a democracy. Well, if you want the devil to control your life, you are able to live with the devil, then you deal with the devil yourself. That's what it really comes down to. Now we have a transgender House of Representative in the state. We've got this thing, which I don't give a damn about that, but it just shows you how ludicrous we've gone. Because I don't have a problem with issue with gays or lesbian or whatever they are. And if they want to do that, quit saying, I want a marriage license. Go make a contract under Article 4. Be a responsible adult. If you're claiming to be an adult, quit acting like a child. And that's what we're dealing with when we have people that go get children. Okay, this is what is disturbing. When they go have a child and then they go register the child and then they say they want responsibility. They don't want responsibility. That is the point, because if you want responsibility, you wouldn't register your child. You would own your child. You would claim life. It's where Isaac comes off and goes, hey, there's no such thing as lawful bloodline American. Well, Isaac Thorne, whatever his name he wants to use this week, he's not even an American. He's a foreigner from a foreign country. And he's telling everybody that you have to go through the court system because his family is the foundation of the court system that brought and destroyed this country. What a thing to have, that you're stating that you destroyed this country by your structure. Hey, what a concept! The one thing is that the court systems were not brought into this structure. The court system came from England. From the Vatican. When you go to court, you are dealing with a black robe judge, a black robe pope. That's what a black robe pope is. This is the point that is comprehending what the circumstances of what religion is really about compared to the fantasy people live. And I mean literally, the people's fantasy they live. Either you know who you are, you know your bloodline, or you don't. It's that simple. If you want to take responsibility for your child, you file and claim it. Because the one thing is under Title IV, they steal children for financial gain. All right, most of us know that. A lot of us know about the birth certificate insurance bond. And what are you doing to stop them stealing your child, your bloodline? Nothing. You just do what you're told, slave. I'm going to read a passage here so you guys comprehend. We are not at the devil's democracy. They could take that Bible back to England. Wake up from the mind control, folks. It's that simple. Wake up from the mind control. Either you love your child or you don't. So they set up these programs so that way they can make the money off the programs. And if you're smart enough, intelligent enough, you start realizing that you could actually file for some of these programs, stay out of their system per se. That is the main point. You don't have to participate in their system. You can file and take your rights back. But the point is filing your paperwork correctly. And that's the point that most people don't realize, that you have to file your paperwork correctly. You cannot sit there and take your paperwork and file it saying that you are citizen or you are national. Because if anybody knows the term national or citizen, that means you are a British subject. You are not an American. End of story. Of course, Isaac will tell you that we're all slaves. He's got a video that he put out on me, which I'm going to be responding back, because he's gone out there and done a few things that, calling me different other slandering names. And the guy doesn't know me, but he does it because people are paying attention to the truth. They're comprehending their rights to their children. If you don't claim your right to your child, you don't have a right to your child. And that's where I'm going to be getting into what they call child support coming up. I do have stuff that we put up on dealing with child support, how you can file on your UCC on your child support. People have done that. They say it works. Me, I don't recommend doing those type of things, because the minute you start doing those type of things and using their instruments and their structure, that's how they arrest people for fraud. And most people don't comprehend that, and they say, oh, we can do everything we want, and this is the way it works. And it doesn't work this way, folks. If you file your tax write-offs and you're claiming tax exempt, you're claiming that the government owes you and you're asking permission. If you read our website, new.org trackers, we do have the taxing laws and regulations up there. And they can't tax labor. End of story. And it's up to you to know the difference of labor, stock, and interest, dividends. Stock and dividends come from what? Interest-bearing accounts, like from Wall Street, those type of circumstances. If you have a bond and annuities, okay, that's an interest-bearing account. See, these are things that are so simple to comprehend once you get to know it. And I mean, I know a lot of people don't know it, and it takes knowledge, it takes time to read and comprehend and educate yourself through this process. I could give you some of the ideas, the concepts, but I want to make sure that you can sit there and read your stuff and know how to handle your circumstances. So you have to be able to write your circumstances, to write your comprehension of your cases up. I get people all the time, and I'm behind on a couple cases right now, literally. But I get people that always say, hey, Ed, write my case up. I can't write your case. I don't know your case. I can throw some suggestions or ideas into a case, but I'm no attorney. I am no lawyer, nor would I try to be a British servant to the King and Queen of England. Absolutely not. I do not support England. I do not support their Bible at all. I do not support anything from England. Because as the good book, the Constitution, that's what I call my good book, says we're not supposed to have anything to do with England. And that is the one point that people do not comprehend. They go, oh, well, we need to go to the Bible. What does the Bible give you? It doesn't give you nothing. It doesn't support you in your structure, and it puts you into slavery. People say it puts you in a structure where you give your rights of your kids away. And that is the sad part, that people don't realize that when you file for your rights, you're filing to own your bloodline. I do have a template up on the website, and I pass it around, to file and own your bloodline. That is 50% yours, and that's 50% of the female or male, whoever you mated with. Sorry, test tubes are not real. You know, if it ain't a male or female, that's not a real living identity. And that's under 1 Section 8. Until a baby sees the light of life. A woman could be pregnant, all right, that is not life. That's a parasite, blood-sucking parasite. Until the pregnancy gets to a certain point, then all of a sudden, once the child is born, now it might have some rights. Now it might be alive. Prior to that, no, it doesn't have rights. It's a woman's body. The woman has the right to her body. And the minute you folks start giving up and going, well, no, God says this, God says nothing. Prove to me where God says that. Prove to me where God is. That is the point. I don't see the proof of God. And if Jesus Christ actually sat down next to you, you would call him a liar, wouldn't you? You know you would. That's a bona fide fact. You wouldn't believe Jesus Christ if he sat down next to you. Of course, then the other point is, what is Jesus Christ and is any of that true? Nobody knows. We know the Bible was written absolutely 400 to 500 years after supposedly Christ. There is no existence of a lot of this stuff. It's all hearsay. It's all written as a fairy tale book when it really comes down to it. Let's be honest. See, and how do you expect your children to be honest if you're not honest? You know, we're coming up to Thanksgiving, a satanic holiday, and they said, oh, well, the Indians, we welcomed all these foreigners to our land. Well, we taught some how to survive, and then when the others came with their arms and started raping and murdering our women, and then we took a defense, and then you went after us and said that we didn't have a right to our land? You British people? So, I mean, it's like knowing what the circumstances of your bloodline, your child is, knowing how we got here, knowing the concept of what the reality is compared to the fantasy that people educate their children on. That is the main point. With Title IV, the state of Oregon, let's say Oregon Territory I'm in, you're living in whatever state you or territory you live in. We're talking 48 states, 50 states, they're non-existent. 50 states is only commercialized. 48 states is lawful and illegal. The 51 or 50 states, if you include Puerto Rico, that's 51. Those are corporations. They cannot even be administrated into our states. That's a fact. It's reading the real history. I mean, I put out a medical contract dealing with newborns, and it's on my site. And if you email me, I'll send it to you. Read the circumstances. When you register your child with the state, you give your child up. You say you're not responsible. You don't love your child. That's exactly what it means. Attorneys ain't going to tell you this. Judges ain't going to tell you this because this is how they make their money. And off of the Social Security Act, this is what I've brought up on 2 talk shows this week. This week I did. And some people just got a little frustrated with me. But that's okay. I've been there before. No big deal to me. But I'm sitting there going, if you actually read the structure, if you actually comprehend what's really going on in the real world, the child is a money bank for the corporation. The corporation is where it stands. And that is called the British government. That is called the Christians. Because Christians rape, rob, and pillage. We know that for a fact. There are public servants, cops, judges, nurses. And the one thing is I do want to say to the elected and public servants who are out there that are nurses, thank you for standing up against vaccines. And we'll try to get people to start standing up with you against the vaccines because you shall not be forced to take a vaccine like a child should not be forced to take a vaccine. Nobody should be forced to take a vaccine. In Australia, they're saying, if you don't take a vaccine, we're going to take your children. Put a gun to these people's heads. Defend your blood. We need to start standing together. Remember, cops do not have authority. Cops work for the city council and mayor as debt collectors. And technically, cops are supposed to monitor and pay attention to elected and public servants. So when elected and public servants break a crime or administration code, they're supposed to be arrested. That's what police are supposed to do. I knew the profession. And that's the point. People don't comprehend what the real truth is. They don't want to tell their children the real truth. If people actually started telling their children the real truth, we would have so many less problems we have today. Literally. We would have less problems. We wouldn't have our children that are afraid to go out in the street today. I mean, I remember growing up when people were on the street, we didn't have a problem. People weren't afraid. People used to walk around with baseball bats, pipes, sometimes even rifles on the West Coast here. Nobody panicked. Nobody got scared. We didn't go boo-hoo-hoo and whine in the wind. We ignored them. If they did something wrong, people stood up and reacted. And that's where we need to get back, to being responsible in reactions. Not sitting here going, we don't know what to do. That is the saddest part that we do. It's like going through the structure that I went through and witnessed this other group that was doing the so-called recall on the governor of Oregon. And it's like, I put out there too when I saw it, and they were out getting donations and collections. And my point right off the bat was, these guys were doing it to me, in my opinion. My opinion, remember, opinions are like diapers, and politicians need to be changed regularly. And you do change the diaper. Excuse me a minute. I had to get some water. It's one of those things that when you do opinions, and you do have to realize when you read legal opinions, they are opinions. They are not where a judge is making an affidavit of statement. If he's making an affidavit of statement, remember the most important part, if he's doing that, he has to take liability. That's why they call it opinion, because they don't want responsibility or liability. When the state of Oregon, Montana, Idaho, Ohio, whatever state passes what they call a bill, okay, those are administrative bills for elected and public servants, registered church members, not for lawful bloodline Americans. Isaac will sit there and tell this like he's done this to a lot of people going, it's crazy, don't listen to him. There's no such thing as a lawful bloodline American. Or I always love it when people say the Constitution doesn't apply to me. And it's like, folks, if you actually read the 14th Amendment, and I've got to go back because I've got some evidence that says technically that wasn't passed, but the 13th Amendment was passed twice. That I do actually have the courthouse and in the congressional records. But I want to jump back here on the Social Security Act of Title 4D and 4E. When you read this structure, these are what was put in place, and this is part of what William Jefferson Clinton and Hillary Clinton wrote. This is exactly how they are able to steal your children. A judge gets $125,000 puts into his retirement fund. Public servants get $7,500 for each child they steal and get adopted out. That's their bonus. They get paid for this rape, rob, and pillage. Piracy. It's no different than it was a couple hundred years ago. It's no different. It's rape, rob, and piracy. They're doing it the same today as they did back then. I don't know how people could comprehend and not believe the truth of what's going on in the real world. Because this is the real world, folks, of what's going on with these people. There is no game in this stuff. When your children are kidnapped and held for ransom, or kidnapped and farmed out, called human trafficking, and it does exist, human trafficking. They don't want to tell you. They don't want to be honorable. They don't want to be sure that you comprehend it. But when you're filing these complaints when your kid is taken, kidnapped, held for ransom, extorted, raped, because a strip search is a rape for any male or female or any child. It's rape. And knowing the difference that it is rape, it's not just that they can get away with it. When you're writing your affidavits up, you have to put that this was kidnapped, held for ransom, personal gain, rape, financial gain for the elected and public servants. You know, so you have to write the criminal charges on these men and women so that way they know that you know that they can't get away with this. That is the main point. When they know that they can get away with it and you can get away with this stuff, this is the point that they want to get away with by taking your child because it's financially beneficial for them. I've even put the structure of the stuff of Oregon State up on the internet, on my walls and stuff, so you can see how much the state of Oregon bills your birth certificate, child's bond, and funds on this stuff. Of course it's billed out. It is billed so that way they want you to pay them to do some kind of job that steals your children, your land, your process. And see, the thing is that in the United States, for America, or of, depends on which way. Originally it was for, then they changed it to of. But when you read the whole circumstances going back in real history, they did all this, the Democratic Party did this to rape, rob, and pillage you. Democrats are liars. They are Christians. They're part of the KKK Foundation was done by Christians. Well, Christians wouldn't found the KKK. They sure the hell did. Learn to read the real truth. The KKK was founded by the Democratic Christian Party, Christian religion. You got to read the truth. Quit lying to yourself. Quit getting into these points where you don't want to sit there and tell yourself the truth. It is truth. They rape, rob, and pillage. It's all a financial coup. I want to bring you up to this other point. This idiot on Democrat, Fred Pignanelli, Pignanellig. They're putting this thing trying to separate the states from the federal government. Because, see, the federal government, we have a contract with the British government that they have to honor the Constitution. These Democrats are idiots. They're trying to say, we need this democracy, and they're saying democracy, and folks, and realize democracy is the devil. Democracy says that you're not entitled to freedom. Democracy says you are not entitled to have your child. Democracy says you are not to have the right to travel without paying the king and queen, the state government, for permission and privilege of your life. That means this Frank Pignanelli is sitting there telling people, if you don't pay the carbon tax, you're not allowed to live and breathe. And that's what it means. Just like the president of Nestle came out to the world and says, well, you're not entitled to life and water because if you don't pay for it, you're not entitled to have it. This is what gets to me, folks. These people are out there doing this stuff to the children out there. They're claiming that if you don't pay the rights to the state, like, say, by a hunting and fishing license, you're not entitled to life to feed yourself. People will tell me, oh, yeah, the Constitution says nothing about life or medical. Well, I hate to really inform you people, and this is where Isaac, me, and him differ, and even with lawful bloodline. The Constitution, as anybody who comprehends or ever read it, first structure of it says life and liberty. Well, hello, intelligent people. Life means you have to breathe, you have to eat. So that means medical. Without medical, you have no life. Without your bloodline, you have no life. So quit letting these democratic idiots, these stupid people out there on the internet, telling you if you don't pay the privilege to life, you're not entitled to life. That's called democracy. That's called the Democratic Party of a living hell. These are people that supposedly believe in what they call a Bible, but so long as they're making money on that Bible, you don't have a right. I mean, come on. Everybody gives money to the church. What the hell does the church need money for? How come they're not growing food? How come God needs money? Let's be realistic, okay? So you're saying God, the churches cannot exist without money. How come they have all this supposed land and they don't grow food? They don't can food. How come the church members are not canning food for the children and the elders? We're supposed to go to a grocery store and pay the privilege to live. Commercial commerce. Everybody says, well, the states have commerce rights. They have commerce right for corporations and businesses only, not for we the people. If you actually read the commercial contracts and the structure in commerce, a citizen and national are British subjects. They don't have rights. They're privileged personnel. Yes, national means the same thing as a citizen, member of an organized group. That's what a national is. And that even goes back to the European nations, international and European nations. Please read the actual laws. Please do the research. I have some of this research on my website. It goes right to the pages. Double check my work, please. Try to prove me wrong. I don't have a problem with that. And if you've got something that I missaw or I didn't comprehend, or bring it to the attention to we the people too. I can always adapt, but when it's right there, I won't adapt when it comes to religion. Religion comes from a foreign country. It's not American. I'm American native, not American. You have to realize that I go by native law. I don't go by a religious Bible from a foreign country that's shoved down people's throats like they did to the native after they raped the women, murdered their children, chickenpox blankets, giving us poison blankets, contaminating our people, and then giving us the Bible and say pray for their sins as they murder us and they murder people. Even they're doing that today. They're telling you we're going to give you vaccinations, and then you die from vaccination, your kid gets paralyzed or you get paralyzed from flu shots and stuff. And then they go, oh, pray to the Bible. If you never got the flu shot, you would never, or the immunization, you would never have to pray to anything, would you? See, if you get on your knees in worship, that's a man or woman begging. When these guys sit there and get on their knees for the flag, national anthem, to me, hey, that shows me that they're not American and they're pleading to we the people. They're kneeling in submission to us people. See? I don't take all that stuff personal like some people do because they don't even know what it really means anyways. They lose their mind, they lose their attitude, they go crazy, and then they want to attack each other for their beliefs that, hey, if you're a Christian, doesn't it say God is supposed to judge? Why the hell are you judging? Think about it. Especially when it comes to our children. When these children get kidnapped and even changed, yeah. A couple of these kids that I've been reading in different states are being forced into sex change, and the states are allowing this moronic bullshit. These children don't even have a concept of what they're thinking about. Even when they turn 18, they might have an idea. They really don't open their eyes up until later in life. I mean, there has been some women and men who went through sex changes in their mid-20s, and then all of a sudden when they hit 40, going, holy shit, it ain't what we thought it was. It's like if you want that, live with it, but when you wake up to the reality where you're sitting there going, that's not what you thought it was, hey, live with what you made the error. And then bring it out to the ones that are willing to listen to you. You don't have to do a public floor, you could have meetings, around the country, different places that you could educate people on. Because a lot of people don't want to hear it because they know better. They're not going to take that risk or that chance on those type of things to do that to their body. And that doesn't go to God. Don't give me the God religious stuff. That goes to common sense of woman and man. That's where we have to get into this. And then I want to get into subsection B, 7. People, 99-401, 103A, 1-4. Okay, this code in, let me bring it to your attention. This code gets right into child abuse and neglect. So child abuse technically is when you're giving your children an immunization shot. That's child abuse. That's neglect. When the government gives your child a neglect of shot, that's neglect of even for the medical personnel, and that's in Title 42 in their Health and Welfare Code. See, these things that are written in this stuff that people say, like Isaac would tell people, you can't use it, it's not yours. You don't have a right, a constitution right in this country. Well, immigration do not have a constitution right until the 5th generation. They have a privilege so long as they keep paying the administrative fees. If they don't pay until the 5th generation, they're not entitled to anything. If they are paying their taxes, administrative fees, and all that, and they get abused by the system, More power to you. Sue the hell out of the public servants because you paid for them to protect you. That's what it's called. And that's the one thing that people do not comprehend. Section B, subsection B7. This gets into furthermore in child neglect, where even the advisory board of child abuse can be held liable. And that's what I say. It's like when you file your criminal complaints on men and women, file them on the board members. The board members of all elected and public employee structure, even CASA. CASA board members could be filed on. And everybody says, oh, the state says we can't sue them. The state says we can't do this. The state doesn't have authority because state is a dead entity. You file the criminal charges on the men and women. The DA doesn't want to do it. The Secretary of State doesn't want to file it. Then you file the charges on them, the Secretary of State. And then when you do that, remember, under the Fair Act of 1938 Foreign Registration Act, I do have templates up. I got a new one that I just put up together, not as long as the original one I did. Excuse me. We'll have that one out, and I'll get that one published on the walls here pretty soon. But I want to get you in to see payments to Indian tribes organizations. It's another thing that gets to me, all right? We're still being paid to steal the bloodline of the Indians, the natives. Remember, natives is not just Indian. Let me clarify. Native is not just Indian. If you're black, Chinese, Russian, whatever, and you've been on this soil for more than 400 or 500 years, more than 200 years, you're a native. Read the legal definition of native. Of course, Isaac Whittham would always say, I'm wrong. You know, this guy is a nutcase anyways out there. He tells people what to do. I haven't seen him have any success. I see him telling people of what to do. You know, like he keeps slandering me out there. You know, I haven't seen anything he's done to help anybody realistically claim a bloodline, claim a case, and claim the surroundings or the circumstances. I hear seeing his videos, and all he does is talk. He doesn't come up with solutions how to defend people, how to succeed with people. He doesn't want to get involved. But he's too busy out slandering people for his personal gain, so that way it makes him look good. That's the sad part. We do got people out there who do that all the time, trying to make themselves look good, and that's the problem that we have today. But I really would like you folks to get into reading Title 42 in the Public Health and Welfare. Because see, once you start reading these things, and you start comprehending, I don't like the word understand because I don't stand underneath nobody. I don't stand underneath no judge. You know, never. Attorneys or attorneys have no legal authority. I've already had the court cases on that. If you hire an attorney that says you're incompetent, you give your authority over to the attorney, so that way you don't have a say. We do agree that if you do get convicted of a crime, crime, I don't like that one. If you get convicted of a statute, code, or administrative rule, I believe the attorney should go to jail for that, not you. Because the attorney took your constitutional rights away for him or she representing you. So I do believe that they should pay that price. They should go to jail for you, not you. You know, that's the problem. People don't get this stuff in this world. And then when it comes down to in Title 42, lunch program, child nutrition, you know, youth medals. These are stuff in water resource planning. Okay, now this is what gets to me about a lot of cities and structure and people don't get about with water resource. They are claiming the water as their resource. Like some states are saying, the rain belongs to the state. The rain came from the Great Spirit and the Creator. Mother Nature made it happen. Or for those who believe in the biblical point, God, your God. Okay? God gave it to you. The man and women of a state corporation or some identity of some religion has no authority to claim it for themselves, Isaac. As he would say, they have a right. No, they don't have a right. That's the point. And I'm going to be responding to you too, dude, because you're saying there are people who don't have a right to their bloodline, to their children. You're saying the courts own them. We already know that the British court came out last year and said the courts own the children, which we know you supported, because I watched that, what you said back then. That's a point that people don't get. And see, the one thing when it comes to your children and those stuff, even for child support, it has to be consent. So when they're threatening you and saying that if you don't sign this paperwork, we're going to throw you in jail. Yeah, we know they do that, folks. And see, this is the point when they start doing that to men and women. This is where we need to stand up and back these men and women up. This is where we need to write criminal complaints on these people and endorse them and set it up so that way men and women have rights. If they don't have rights, you don't have rights. It's that simple. It really is that simple, because if you're going to deny somebody else a right, then you shouldn't have a right either. And I'm talking even immigration, even though that they're privileged. The state has no right stealing their children as they do. That's a fact. But even with immigration, you have to know how to write the criminal complaint as knowing your legal standing in court. There is two court structures, a lawful, bloodline, and legal. Yes, it is true. It is real. People don't want you to know that, especially attorneys. Attorneys will lie all the time because they're liars. That's the definition of a lawyer and attorney. Lawyer, liar. Attorney, liar. It's really the definition of them. Look them up, please. And you say that you want to own your child. Well, I do have a template, but you have to claim your child. If you do not claim ownership of your child, okay, that is the one thing. If you do not claim ownership, you're not entitled to your child. That is the point. Yeah, I'll send you a copy of it. I got one guy says he's at work. He cannot listen to the show. I'll send him a link to it. But see, the one thing is that you have to stand up to the circumstances. If you don't stand up for your rights, how do you expect anybody else to stand up for your rights or their rights? That is the most valuable lesson people can actually learn in the world. Standing together. If we are supposed to be we the people, where are we the people? Who is the we the people? Who are the men and women protecting the children who are not just out there lying to themselves saying we're doing something? We see that all the time. People go, I'm doing this, I'm protecting kids. I haven't seen people out there protecting the kids. I've seen people on street corners. I don't see all that stuff happening the way it is. I've been out there protecting kids. I've been out there on the street myself. I've been out there serving public servants, criminal records from different public agencies myself. Done it, been there, live it. It's not being bashful. It's not putting yourself in a sling either. That's the one thing you do not want to sit out there and put yourself in a financial obligation on these issues. But it is frustrating when there's only one or two men or women standing on a street corner and nobody else wants to stand with them, and it's very discouraging when people are not protecting one another. And then when something happens to you and you wonder why nobody's there for you when you haven't been there for somebody else. I mean, these things, I know how difficult it is, and I know how people are afraid if they stand up. And they're afraid because if they do stand up, they get categorized. Yes, that really does happen in this country. Yes, that really does happen in this state. And also, too, if you go to the Social Security structure on this of Section 47142 USC 671, this is where the state plans Social Security payments. So when they kidnap and steal your child for personal and financial gain, they bill Social Security under the birth certificate on that. So they go after the Social Security funding, and if your child is disabled or elderly, you're supposed to get that income, not them. But they don't tell you this. They don't want you to file for it. They don't want you to claim it because the state wants it because they don't believe that you have the right to it. You have to realize that public employees do not love you. Public employees do not care about you. I don't give a damn if it's your mommy and daddy. They don't love and care you. When they work for the government, they work for the government. They don't work for you. They don't love you. They don't care about you. And as soon as you start comprehending that reality, and I'm talking reality, because people don't get this point. They really do not comprehend. They think that all this stuff is, a wonderful life. And when it really comes down to it, it's not a wonderful life. We're living with all the circumstances that are going down and destroying people for personal and financial gain. You know it. I know it. You've seen it. And the thing is that we got to get to the point, instead of having that happen, standing up for people. It's up to us to stand up for one another. And if we don't stand up for one another, how do we expect our children to learn and educate how to stand up for one another? That is the major part right there. How do you expect your children to learn if you're not educating them? And that means you have to help educating them. You have to participate in your children's life. The state is not going to educate your child for you. The child is not there for the state to be humble for you. The state doesn't love you. Remember, the state is a corporation, a dead body out for personal and financial gain. That's their story. That's their livelihood. That's the way they live. This is the one thing that is the reality of the circumstances of what goes on. I mean, it's that simple what happens in life. And so with your child, when it comes down to when the state kidnaps your child, and the one thing I've dealt with a lot of people, that their kids have been kidnapped and assaulted, but, unless you are going to be standing with your child, unless you're going to stand and make sure that you stand with your child, and if it takes filing a complaint on a public pretender, if it takes filing criminal charges on an attorney and lawyer, that means you need to do it. And if you ask for help and people help you do it, then you need to do it. I've helped several people that have done this, and then all of a sudden they'll stand up and say, well, what does it matter? Why should I have to file on the attorney? Why does it matter if I file on attorney, if I do or don't file on attorney? Well, to me, it's like, then what the hell are you asking me for? You came to me for assistance or a thought, and then you're not willing to stand up for your child or for those around you. That's how the reality works. You can't expect people to put their life on the line for you, folks. It doesn't work that way. That's fantasy world. It is literally fantasy. It is. It so much is fantasy. When this thing where men are supposed to stand up for women, and women don't stand up for men, and men are supposed to give their lives for women, and then all of a sudden we get nothing in return? Hello? Anybody with intelligence there? Anybody that's got a comprehension of the real world there? Those are things that you need to think about. Those are things that you need to worry about. Because if you don't stand up for those circumstances protecting your bloodline, that's like this damn TV commercial that they got going on with an idiot out there called Re-Empower the States Amendment. No, this is to destroy the states, folks. This empower of the state. And they're trying to say that, if you do this, we're going to be fine. No. They're telling you that we want to control the situation. We are telling you that you have no rights, period. And if you don't do it, we tell you under the Christianity rules and regulations, we're going to murder you. Same thing that happens today, no difference. Reality check, yeah. Here's the fact. Nationals and citizens are members of a political community who in their associate capacity. So if you're a citizen or national, you're part of a community, and your community that's doing whatever you want, including what's called the religious belief of the Bible. You're not saying that the Constitution has any rights. You're not saying a woman has rights. You're not saying a man has rights. You're saying that the Bible dictates to you, and if you don't do what a book tells you to do, you should be executed. Hello? Start thinking, folks. If you have rights, you have rights. If you have privileges, you have privileges. Learn how to claim and learn the separation of the word privilege, called democracy, and a Republican form of government called a right. Also, too, federal law also prohibits cities and counties from issuing citations against businesses. Oh, wait a minute. Your birth certificate, isn't that a business? That's a corporation. Think about it. See Title 18 U.S.C. 891 through 896, mainly quoting Section 891. Extraordinary means is any means which involves the use or an express of an implicate threat of use of violence or criminal means cause harm to personal, basically stealing your property, taking offense on you, no one bond to obey an unconstitutional law. Remember, these are statute codes and administrative rules that apply to elected and public servants and registered church members. Registered church members cannot claim the Fifth Amendment. Public employees cannot claim a Fifth Amendment. They can't. You don't have Fifth Amendment rights because by you being a public employee, you give up your rights. Simple. You give up your rights to work for the corporation for a privilege called the paycheck. I want to get into this major part, and I'm posting this up, and I believe we have this on our wall. We, the people of the constitutional republic, are not a democracy. So when it comes to Title 42, when they're sitting there taking this money out that Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton wrote to charge the people for lawyers and attorneys, judges make $125 in retirement fund. Attorneys usually get anywhere from $5,500 to $15,000 a case by what they call taxpayers' expense. Caseworker gets a minimum $7,500 for every child that's in custody and adopted out. They get a $1,500 bonus for the court fee, the court presentation when they go in, and if they get past that. These people make buku money. These guys make anywhere from $50,000 to $300,000 a year for stealing children. Minimum. It's a racket. So this is why I encourage you to go read these information. Block grants, that's another one. State of Oregon has block grants it gets from the federal government, and that's why they steal children. I've argued this up on public hearings in the state of Oregon. I've produced evidence on this stuff. And I love it when people try to tell me there's no bloodline, like this Isaac. And I've already put a challenge, I'll put a challenge out too, again. I would love to do a talk show with you, little boy, because you're sitting there and tell everybody they have to go by law. Well, in this country, this world of the country, until we were invaded and terrorized by immigrants, we didn't have your court systems. A man dealt with it, his law, his home. You come in and offend his wife or rape his child, he has the right to take your life right then on the spot. And I appreciate and I congratulate those DAs who stand up and all these whiny people out there going, he should be charged, he should go to jail, he killed him. Excuse me. So in other words, you should be raped, you should be murdered, and nobody should stand in your defense? Wake up, you ignorant. See, that's the problem with people. They don't think. They are such programmed people that they think that they have a right to a democracy. Democracy gives you no rights. The Constitution gives lawful bloodline American rights. It gives legal citizens privileges. So long as you comply with it, you have not a Constitution right. You have a paid right until the fifth generation of your bloodline becomes lawful, not legal. It's in the Constitution. That's the point. People don't read the Constitution. They want to interpret things. And this is the other thing that gets to me in Part C of the Title 42 structure. And this is the other thing that really gets to me. They have parent structures of permissions for parents. federal parent locator services. And see, that's supposed to be going to the parents, but what they do with that one is they really don't offer it to the parents that are being threatened and stuff. They put the kid in foster care, and then they ship the foster parents and the kid out around the country and pay for it that way. Because they get more funding that they can write off of the debt note. That is the point, the debt note. You got to realize that in March 9th, 1933, when the Bankruptcy Act passed and went through, it was the British government who owes we the people. We the people are not in debt. The British government has been in debt to us 5 times. Knowing that we the people could never went in debt. Even in the Civil War, men and women of America brought their own guns, their own ammunition, their own clothes, their own patches. Same going back to 1776. Okay, they didn't have country funding. They brought their own material in, their own weapons. So this is the point. When we fought a lot of these wars on the soil, men and women brought their own materials in, their own weapons. There was no mass funding like we're taught in these so-called programs of schooling. That's like saying Columbus discovered America. What morons would say that when he raped, robbed, and murdered the native people? What he did. He didn't show no compassion. And the other point is they say he never even came to this country. He went by it. And then they try to put him in that. That's a Spain, It's like Cape Brown, the governor of Oregon. See, he was born in Spain. She's not even an American. Wake up. That's called democracy. We can lie, cheat, and steal. Yeah, all right. And they say, well, she's the first basic gay governor we've had. She's married to a man. She's adopted 2 foreign children that were stolen from another home. So she's a lawyer, so she supports rape, robbing, and stealing people for financial gain. I know that about Kate Brown. I know it for a fact, because I know that she was involved destroying my family for financial gain. That's what she does. That's what these people do. I have never met one that never did that. But I'm saying it's so apparent for you folks to take the time. Yes, it might take you 2 weeks really to read and comprehend. And if you don't know a word when you're reading some of this stuff, go to the dictionary, type it up, type it blindly on the internet. It'll come up. Try to read the definition. And if you don't comprehend, type in a video definition. Because it will come up where a video definition usually will come up where somebody's explaining it to you 2 or 3 different ways on a video, because sometimes people need to explain where they comprehend it. I get that. I realize that. That's the point, that we're supposed to work together so that way you know your rights. Because if you don't know your rights, who else is going to know your rights? It's like all codes, rules, and regulations are government authorities only. Not human creations and coordinates. So, remember, these are written for your elected and public servants to go by. So long as man and woman does not cause personal or property damage, you're not liable. And then we got people out there saying that, well, if your kid don't go to school, you should go to jail. And I keep going, these poor morons. Who gives somebody else the right to dictate to somebody else how they live in their own home? That is the point. Who gives somebody a right? It's like one of the stories I just got through going through, and this happens to children too. Well, a Vietnam vet, was in the hospital dying, and all the nurses were laughing at him because he's dying of pain and suffering. That is cruel and inhumane punishment, the way I look at it. But then again, you sort of have to look at a compassion side, that these women, these nurses, that was their way of dealing with it because it was hard traumatically for them. I'd much rather give them the benefit of the doubt of something like that, instead of always thinking a negativity to everybody else. See, sometimes you have to think about the benefit of doubt or give somebody the kindness of one's heart, but you don't give stupidity out. You never give stupidity out. You don't bow yourself. And it's like I got this on the site. Hiring an attorney waives your constitutional protections. It's making you a ward of the British court system. Remember, when you go to these court systems, it has the British flag in it. Oh, that's right, called the Gold Fringe flag. That is the British flag flying, folks. You have to realize this. When they sit there and they take your kid for Title 42 for financial funding. And that's what it is. It's all about financial funding. And don't forget, when you call a public servant or call a cop, you are calling them to give away your child. And I watch these videos all the time. Women go, well, I called them because I had this problem. Or my kid was disabled and they had a fit and I didn't know how to deal with it. Or I didn't want to deal with it, so I called the cops. And the cops rolled up and they shot and murdered my kid because I called them because I didn't know how to deal with my kid. And they do that. They've killed many, many children that way in this country. Parents will call up, a kid's having a medical fight. Remember, ADHD and all that crap is bullshit anyways. You and I are all attention deficit disorder. They came up with that as a positive thing for financial gain. Type in ADHD Director Foundation. They did that for financial gain. It had nothing to do with protecting people. They don't care. See, that's the one thing that people got to realize, that people don't care when it comes down to it. It's all about money. You know, this is another thing that gets to me. You know, this news story that comes up, 3 people injured after a small plane crashes on a home in San Jose, California. I don't believe planes and helicopters should be flying over residents because when they crash into people, there's no insurance policy. There's no liability. But Randall Stone has a petition up that I don't know if we have on a website yet. We'll get it. I posted it all over my sites. It's called the Complete Audit of Social Security Act of Title 4D and 4E. Let me clarify. A complete audit of Social Security Act of Title 4D and 4E. And see, I don't do those type of things. I'm going to be probably putting one up, but I can't. I'm not a registered citizen. I'm not a citizen. I'm not national. I'm not a religious man believing in that corporation of registration. No, I'm not. I won't comply to the British standing. I'm not a British subject. So he's out for a goal of trying to get 100,000 signatures by December 17th, basically, about a month away. It can't happen, folks, but please put this up. I'm going to go post it on the Oregon Trackers video, too, so people can see this. So I'll go ahead and post this on the YouTube video so, people can see exactly what I'm talking about, so that way there cannot be a conflict. I'll post the other stuff up on tonight's show so that way people can get it. So they can see on the show where it is, and they can go on our website. We'll have this up on our website, too. Because the whole point is working together, making sure that you have this information. Because if you don't have the information, who else is going to help you out when you have a difficult problem? Who's going to help you out when you're in a trouble situation? See, people have got to really think about these things. They really got to think about these things, and most people don't. So I'll post those up when I'm able to, because this won't allow me because it's going on right now. I do appreciate those people who are with us tonight, and appreciate the deal on this. And we get a lot of people that will sit out there and contradict what I say, but then again, all they do is talk. They're not willing to put evidence out. They're not willing to talk like this Isaac, does his little thing out there to the general public. It's very frustrating when people do this. They slander people for their own personal gain, but they're not willing to tell the truth on circumstances. They don't want you to know. They don't want you to know. And this is the one thing that people get it. It's like, doing a motion You know, I love it. What is that? Isaac Wetham is what his name is. He's got another one up here. You know, and I'm waiting to do a talk show with this guy on this stuff. Because he does motions and stuff. I don't do motions. A motion is asking a court for permission. I do an affidavit and I instruct the court what to do. You can instruct the court what to do, a judge what to do. That is, you can do it. Knowing how to do it, but yes, you can do it. See, it's very interesting when you have men and women who don't know how the court system works. Because everybody thinks the court system works by what they do. It doesn't work that way. And that's the frustration. You know, people are out there telling you that if you don't follow this court administrative rule, you're not going to get anywhere. That's not true. I don't follow court. I read their administrative rules, absolutely. And I suggest that you read their administrative rules. Because the thing is, when you go to war, when you go bear hunting, you need to know how to hunt the bear. That is a major part, is knowing how to hunt the bear. And if you don't know how to hunt the bear, you lose. That is the most valuable point of hunting. And I've done a lot of hunting in my time. A lot of hunting. And I've been in the woods. I know what it's like to go hunt. I know what it's like to shoot animals. And I know what it's like to take life. But you have to be responsible for what you're taking. You have to live with the responsibility of what you've taken. And if you don't know the responsibility, that's like when you're filing for your child's right. You have to know the child's right. If you don't know the right of the child, that's because you don't believe in yourself. You are man. You are the great spirit. Mother Earth, Mother gives life. Without Mother giving life, there is no life. It's that simple, folks. There is nothing beyond that. If you don't give life, there is no life. If you don't stand up for life, there is no life. That is the one thing that people do not get. You have to stand up for your life. And if you don't stand up for your child's life, and knowing that if it wasn't for you and a woman, that child would not be alive. The child technically is called a monster when it's born. I'm going to read this, and if you want it, I will make sure you get the information. We do have it. You can read how to claim your child, your bloodline. I have that up. I have that out there for the general public, so that way you know what the truth is. I am going to be, tomorrow night, I'm going over with the deal in Arizona of them killing horses. What they are doing is they're murdering horses. Left and right, they're murdering horses for personal gain, for BLM. And that's tomorrow night's show. I'll get into a lot of stuff on that. I got an affidavit that people can file, and that way they can charge these people criminal charges on these men and women. Because the sign that we start doing this is like our elected and public servants. And I've heard this from them personally, saying they can't do nothing unless the people file. And they know it, but the people have to file. See, it's our responsibility. It's our government. It's our elected and public servants. Once you start realizing it's our elected and public servants, then we have rights. But if you do not stand up for your rights, there is no rights. And you have to stand up for the rights and prove those rights. And that's exactly where we're at today, proving one's rights. And that is the biggest point, proving one's right. And if you know you have a right to your child, then you can stand up for your child. And as the book says, a human being see monster. Valenti's Law Dictionary, 1930, when a child is born, it's called a monster. The other point is one code 8 A human being, a child, is not alive until it sees light or until it breathes. It's not alive. It doesn't have a right. It doesn't exist. It doesn't live. These are things that have to be taken into consideration and realized, learned, studied. And once you start studying these things, my God, the light starts working wonderful. People start realizing that they have rights instead of privileges. It does really work that way. You can't be afraid of what life is. And when people are afraid of what life is, that's where we lose. That's where the children are losing. And that is a sad part of life, because the one thing is when the children lose, we all lose. We really do lose. And like I said, what's going on with Title 42, I do put up a structure that I do have up on the internet, and that is strictly dealing with Oregon State, where they value your child, and they actually have it written on a value chart for financial gain for the state, and they actually do value the child. Financial gain off of Title 42 for the financial gain of these things. That's why I like to see Randall get these signatures on these things and get this done. Because, you know, me and Randall have some religious points of view that are very different, because I don't believe in the book. I believe in the Great Spirit and Mother Earth and the way Native is. But, you know, and that's the whole point. We're supposed to respect one another. Oh, that's an interesting concept. Respecting one another, having honor, huh? That's a scary deal when you think about it, huh? See, when people don't stand up for one another, this is where it gets interesting. You know, and that's where I'm going to be trying to Isaac, because I want us folks to realize when you have that child, that came from your blood and that woman's blood. Test tubes don't become living. You know, animal selection is not real. So it's knowing what the life really is of the child. And that's where you have to come in place and realize what life is about. And if you don't know that life and how these organizations are working to steal your bloodline, you know, to take your kids, it's like, I'm going to read this to you here in a second. The supremacy clause, I'll get into that one, because people need to know what the law is. All right? The law is the Constitution. Statute codes and administrative rules are British administrative rules of a foreign court. Foreign court of the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act. Remember, these are foreigners. They don't have rights. Elected and public servants do not have rights when they're on the job. They work for we the people. If they violate their privileges, they shall go to jail. And we got to start doing this, is putting these felony charges and get these people in jail. And if we don't do it, nobody else is going to do it. That's the problem with society. These people are getting away with destroying one another's families, destroying life. I mean, I know, and I get people that attack me all the time on circumstances, and I don't care. And when they do, I want them to have the courage, like this guy. He's supposed to have the courage, if he wants to attack me, then stand up. Let's do an open forum. You don't sit there and backstab and play this game on Facebook and the internet and act like a little child. You know, I mean, that's what he's doing. He's acting like a little child and expects people to believe him. He comes up with so much stuff. Half the stuff he comes on is scary. Tell you the truth. So you comprehend, and I got other parts with a warrant, but the warrant is supposed to technically be issued by a grand jury of 12. A warrant cannot be signed by any administrative judge, Isaac, whatever you think it is. I'm talking law, not statute codes and administration. They can if you are a citizen or national, and if you never filed for your rights to claim and own you, and file it with their system so that way they know that you are not a citizen, a national. That's the point, to know the separation of lawful bloodline American rights, legal citizen rights, legal national rights, and those are what they call immigration rights. A warrant must be signed with wet ink. A warrant cannot ever be robo-stamped because that's a felony. And it is a felony. A warrant has to be followed by an affidavit of facts. And if it's not followed by an affidavit of facts, and that's why when you get kidnapped or your kid gets taken, especially when DHS steals children, you want to put immediately an affidavit to see the affidavit that was filed on to take that kid. You want to see whoever's filing the affidavit that's claiming that you are not the biological property parent of that child. You want to see the proof. You want to see the proof of what somebody's claiming against you. You have the right to see that proof immediately and file that. That has to be issued with a warrant. That's by law, not by administration code. Well, actually, it is by administrative code too, but they overlook it. So if you want to force your rights, I should recorrect my statement. Not force, insert your rights. See, it's knowing the words. Instead of putting force in your stuff, always put insert your rights. Insert means the same thing, but it means a little stronger than force. Doesn't mean aggressive. It means you have the right to that. It gives you your rights. And also, too, the Constitution is the law of the land. And that's the one thing that people need to comprehend, that real fact. How the law works. Not what people interpret what they think it does. You cannot interpret anything when you're making a complaint, when you are making an affidavit, because when you're making an affidavit of facts to get the facts that they're claiming on, you need to make that affidavit completely clear so that way there is no comprehension or compromising of them going after you or throwing your case out. Every state must conform to the republic form of government. That is by law. We are not no democracy. We are not a democracy. Wake up, folks. We're not a democracy. And when you quote and say, we're a democracy, you are lying at your teeth. Because a democracy under religious structure means that you have no rights. If a judge tells you to go commit suicide, you shall commit suicide. That's what a democracy really is. Wake up to what a democracy really is compared to what you think it is. Make sure you know the law. You know, I'm posting this stuff, Isaac. Let's do this stuff. I'm trying to get, you know, the guys over at Guerrilla Radio, Austin, and all these people to stand up. But, you know, everybody wants to do their talk shows around this stuff, and we've had a lot of talk shows changed, especially on my Monday night. People have changed their talk shows to my Monday night. So I just want people to know this stuff and what goes on. I want people to comprehend what goes on because the law says every state must comply with the Constitution of the United States. That's where these states right now, the Democrats are trying to get their states out of the structure so that way if they can get their states out of the structure of the state, then this way they can go and make sure that you have no rights. That's the bottom line of this. They want to make sure you have no rights. They are definitely going after you to make life a privilege for you. It's a real fact. They want to make sure life's a privilege for you. So it's simple. Do you want a privilege or do you want your rights? Do you want your bloodline? You have to file and claim your bloodline. Like, you know, Ken will say, you don't have to file. We shouldn't have to file. We shouldn't do this and we shouldn't have to do that. Idiot, we have to file because how do you know that you're lawful or legal in this country? People say, I don't have to prove that. Well, yes, we really do have to prove that because if this is our country, we need to know who's lawful and legal in this country. We need to know people who have rights compared to privileges. That's a fact. People just don't have a right to come into your home, put their feet up on your table, take your remote from you, tell you to go cook them dinner, and you're now the slave in your own home. Oh, that's right. That's what the Muslims are trying to do to us. So, and that's what the Democrats are doing to us right now today. You know, and everybody goes, oh, we're Democrat. And it's like, read the definition of democracy and Democrat. If you actually read the definition, if you actually know what the words mean, you might be able to get a little further advanced if you know what the words mean. That's the one thing that people don't know what exact words mean. They get confused because people hear something, but they don't really research the word or the clause or the circumstances. And that's what I try to do, is to get this information out to you so you know that every state must confirm first place with the Constitution. It's like Oregon doing this stuff in these sanctioned cities. They don't have rights in the DREAM Act. What happens, folks, when you wake from a dream? Isn't that reality? So when we sit there and give these people, these immigrants, food, water, and shelter at the cost of our veterans, you know, everybody says, well, the veterans have rights. Well, until you start protecting your country, they don't have rights. Be realistic, people. You can't say somebody has a right when you don't care about your own country. You're not protecting your country. You're not saying your country has a right. You know, you're saying, oh, we need to protect immigration. What happened about protecting the men and women of this country? Interesting thought. The men and women who get forced into wars that they think that they're fighting for we the people, when they go to these wars, and it has nothing to do with we the people. It has to do with the corporation. I mean, what happened when people went to go fight? What country was that? Vietnam. Copper and zinc. Oil territory. Materials, I mean. And this is the point, is knowing what we're fighting for. Do we really know what we're fighting for? So that's like these people going out there trying to change the state and give these people foreign identities and foreign structures. That's the frustration that we're living right now today still. And people don't realize that we're living the same way Nazi Germany did. Exactly the same way Nazi Germany did. There is actually no difference today as they were doing back then in 1930. There is no difference. There's absolutely no difference. So, anyhow, I've been going on for about an hour and a half now, close to an hour and 20 minutes. I'd like to open up the floor. If anybody's got any comments, we could get into something that way.
All participants are unmuted.
Ed.
Yes, the floor is open. Go.
Yeah. Earlier you said that to move the court, you need to know the difference between motion and instructing the court to move.
Right.
What exactly did you mean by that?
All right. A lot of people will put a motion into a court because they're motioning the court. Remember, a motion is like a ship. Okay. So what I'm talking about that is instructing the court. It is knowing the circumstances of how to instruct the court of what you want. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish of your goal in the courtroom, if that makes sense. So it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So you want to instruct your court to move in the direction that what you want to do. So what you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to accomplish, is what you're trying to put the court to do. Okay, so it depends on. I mean, give me a suggestion of what you're thinking you want the court to do.
Okay, I've already followed. Let's say I followed the instruments. Now I want to, and all the pleadings have been done and everything. and now I want to go ahead and motion the court to close the pleadings. Wouldn't that be a motion or instructing the court what to do?
You're instructing the court to doing what you're asking, and if the court does not do that, you want them to prove why. See, when people get responses back from the court, they don't ask a question back by the court of what goes on. Okay, the court says, you don't have this right, you can't do this, you can't do that. You know what I'm saying, we all been there. And when the court tries to tell me they can't do something, I write back to them, and I want them to spell it out completely to explain their point. Does that make sense?
Some. I'm still trying.
So you want to prove their point. They're saying they don't want to do this, or they're not going to move this or that. You want them to prove why they're not doing it. You're asking to make proof.
You mean like that one gentleman who was trying to file for Ken or Paxton, and they denied him his motion, and then he just let it go from there. So instead of just stopping there, you want them to prove their point on why they denied
Right,
him.
Exactly. And see, that's what Mike just did. Mike just put together a deal going back on his for them to prove why.
Okay, I think I got it.
They can't just throw it in the wind and say they don't have to do something. They have to prove why. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because you know how they are. They're getting more aggressive with trying to protect themselves because they know they're getting caught with their pants down. But let's say they don't want to answer it, or they say they don't have to. What can you do after that then?
Well, see, and the other point is that's where people are getting it. You take it out of their court, and you take it to another court. And it's like I got an individual right now that just filed and got a Supreme Court case, got a Supreme Court number. And then the Supreme Court was saying that, they're trying to dismiss it. Well, it's like, no, you don't let them dismiss it now. They give you a case number. They gave you a fact. Now you want them to insert that fact and prove why. Now you write the letter back going, when they're trying to claim this on you, to prove it. You want them to prove their standing. You want them to prove their difference.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You want them to prove.
Yeah, you're basically putting the ball back in their court and telling them, okay, fine, then prove what you're saying to me is correct.
Yes, exactly. And then also, too, when you ask them to do that, you always want to put in it that you want it proven by the Constitution and their administrative oath of office. That pisses them off each and every time. Because
and we like doing that.
Huh?
And we like pissing them off, right?
Well, no. Well, they take it as pissing off because now you're questioning their authority. But the bottom line is not directly going after pissing them off. The bottom line is like a motion is filed as a legal notice by the way of an affidavit, okay? Will not be read and will likely be ignored by foreign agents and their private administrative tribunal courts, okay? Because you're filing a motion in their structure to ask them the motion to do something instead of asserting your right, proving your case that if they cannot prove it by the Constitution. So you want them to prove what they're trying to dismiss. Do you get where I'm coming from? Does that make a little sense now?
Oh, it makes clear sense. It's just trying to think how how would you write that up? I mean, would you just blatantly just write it out as a something like an interrogatory to them, or
No, not derogatory. I mean, you've seen some of my stuff in my work where I use their words, their administrative rules.
That's what I mean. But you would label number it as 1, 2, 3, and then answer this question, why you're doing this, and you know, kind of. I'm trying to figure out a pattern on how you would outline it to send them something like that, because I don't think there's a template of something where you could instruct the court to answer these questions. So it basically would have to be done from scratch, but I'm trying to figure out how would you outline it. Something like in interrogatories, you would number it so many questions and then send it to them and have them answer each one of those.
Well, there are some templates out there, or ideas, I should say, out there. So it depends on what the angle that you're thinking of going on to put it into the fashion of it to work. So there are ideas out there. You can type it on the internet, and you'll be surprised. Ideas do come up.
Oh, okay.
You know, so I mean, don't be bashful, because I mean, it might not be what you think it is, or reads to you in that fashion, to be quite bluntly with you. But then again, it'll come to you and read a different way to you, where you're going, oh, this makes logical sense to me now. So there are ways just to look at it differently, if that makes sense.
Yes, I comprehend.
You know, so that's the whole point, is making sure that it is done in a fashion that cannot be disputed against you, and you're putting it in their instruments into their hand to prove the structure for them to prove it. So you want them to prove their statement. If he says, well, we can't do this or we can't honor that, you want him to prove what he's saying. See, we have a right to ask these things, and this is where people go, well, we don't have a right to ask these things. Yes, we do. And see, that's the whole point, because you want to instruct your public servant to do their job. Because they're tribunal judges, technically. So technically, when it really comes down to it, we're not supposed to even have contact with judges when it really comes down to it. That's the amazing point. We're not supposed to have contact with our public servants, and that's even by federal law.
Okay. I appreciate you explaining it. I yield.
Yeah, you know, that's the whole point. You know, so once we start comprehending how the courts work, because I mean, they're supposed to respond back to us in writing, and they're supposed to outline their questions in writing. And so when you get this in writing, and you start getting this where it starts meaning the structure of what's going on, then people start putting it together. Because, like I said, the courts are supposed to technically be working for you and me when we go to court. It's not supposed to be working for a corporation. And the corporations are technically not even supposed to have anything in the courts to begin with. Have you see where I'm coming from with that one? Because it's like, go ahead.
No, I was letting you know I comprehend what you're saying.
Okay, it's like tomorrow I'm going to be finishing. I'm trying to get this other template done for a group of people for the horses in Nevada, because they're trying to execute the horses in Nevada. And it's like, that's the whole point. They want to get rid of all these horses. BLM does. BLM says they have a right to do this. BLM has no right to do this stuff whatsoever. They don't own the horses, number one. Number two, we the people technically own the animals, technically. And so they're trying to get rid of these animals so we don't have to deal with them, or they don't have to be responsible for our animals. And remember, these are we the people's animals. These horses and these ponies and these mules and donkeys and this foreign country that they're claiming of BLM. Because BLM was originally created, only was BLM created to file your, what is that called? Your paperwork on your property. So they're only supposed to file deeds on lawful land, not legal land. They're not supposed to be filing under the corporation. They're supposed to be filing legal land. And that is the point. They cannot file corporation land. Because corporations and banks cannot own land. And that's the one thing that people don't really comprehend, that fact or reality. Because banks cannot own land. Corporations, your city, county, and state cannot own land. They are the stewards of your land that we the people own, that they are supposed to manage for us. They're not even supposed to sell that land, trade it, and they can't privatize it even for us to buy. And that is the point. They're not supposed to even privatize it for even us to buy. It can't be privatized. BLM cannot even privatize land to buy for people to buy. The state of Oregon governor cannot sell and privatize land for people to buy. And that's the point. The public land is supposed to be there indefinitely. And especially when it's public forest land. That's supposed to be protecting our food resources, our children, and food resources for our children. And when it doesn't do that, we all lose. I mean, right now, today, if we look at what Fukushima has done to our food and our population of our food, it's disgusting. Because all of our food is contaminated. I mean, on the West Coast here, in West Coast here in Washington, Hanford is actually leaking into the river, killing off the fish, poisoning the wildlife. It's actually leaking in the river. So, and people don't get that one, and they think that their children are safe. They're not. I really hate to tell you, folks, your kids are not safe because it's leaking right into the river. And people go up there and do water sports. People go up there and ski. People eat the fish out of the rivers and the streams. And then we wonder why the kids are sick and all this stuff happens with the kids. I mean, it's right there in front of us. That's the saddest point. That is the saddest point. So anyhow, so if you got a thought, we can always throw something together, come up with some ideas or something like that might work too. So anyhow, do we got anybody else like to throw in a thought? And like I said, tomorrow night I'm going to get into dealing with animal cruelty, animal harassment, because we do have a right to our public horses, because they are ours. And as soon as people realize that these animals are ours, we have a right to them. And when they kill off our property, sell our land, do this stuff to our food resources, do this stuff to our public access, our children lose. Everybody loses, and that's the point, that one day we got to stop doing this to each other, losing each other's rights, homes, assets. We can win this stuff, but it's working together. So anybody else? If there's nobody else, I'm thinking about probably calling it a night tonight, and then, like I said, tomorrow night I do plan on really getting into BLM and property rights, and that real structure of real rights compared to what people are led to believe, and especially horse animal cruelty that the state does. And remember, Title 7, 136, you and I were all animals. So we're all animals, so we got to think about that one. So when they do this to us, it is doing it to us. Because we're an animal. We're no different than any other animal on the face of the earth. Literally, we're not. So, but anyhow, if nobody's got anything else, I would like to say we thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll get more information up on the wall. I should have that for the wild horses in Arizona up here publicly up on the new.org and tracker site here pretty soon. I do have other stuff. I do have the structure up that the new medical contracts to claim for your bloodline, your child. I do have the structure how to file on your elected and public servants. I whittled it down to basically, I do have original one. I think it's 41 pages. And I got this new one down to 3 or 4. I would print the 41 pages out so you have the backup and the history, but I would serve this other one on your mayor, city council, and them. Because as soon as we start working together and everybody starts filing on their mayor, city council, their county commissioners, their senators, and state rep to see if they're registered with the 1938 Foreign Agent Registration Act, and if they're not, let's get the men and women in prison. Go ahead.
I guess he'd rather spend his time up in the mountains.
Huh?
Where it snows.
Speak up. Can't hear you. Okay. Anyhow, then I guess we'll just end it tonight. And I thank you all for listening and for those who are passing on the video. Like I said, new.org and Trackers has a lot more information that we are getting up there for the general people to educate themselves on. Please, and we're working on getting that homeschooling for the kids site up, more and more education. We got more sites going up on how to plant home vegetables and home gardens and medication that grows in the woods. So we can start working to protect ourselves. That's what's going to take us to protect one another. So, and then I would like to say, may the Great Spirit and Mother Earth protect you, give you life, and may the Great Spirit and the Creator overlook over you. So, anyhow, I appreciate it, and you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Education by Ed. This is Sunday, November 19th, 2017. Y'all have a good night, and remember, the only pop quiz that you'll ever have is every day of your life.